Hey guys, welcome back to No Casuals. It's so good to be back in the co-host spot after a few weeks away. How you feeling, Luke? How's it feel to be back with
I'm
me as your wonderful co-host once again?
I'm feeling great. It's great to hear your voice. I'm sorry I got you sick. It's great that you're back, and it's gonna be nice to have not having Teddy for a co-host for a change.
I'm taking these glasses off because I keep seeing my own reflection. I don't like it.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, well, Ted will have his moment. He'll have his time in the sun. Don't even worry about it. But first, we got to talk about some stuff that's been in the news lately in the world of mixed martial arts and the world of the UFC. Now, first things first, Joyerson Brito is fighting Pat Sabatini in the Apex. Now, as we all know, Pat Sabatini trains with Eddie Alvarez out of Newtown, PA. But Joyerson Brito is no joke. Do you have an early prediction for that fight, Luke?
I mean, I'm gonna back my own town, so I'm gonna go with Sabatini. But Brito is a pretty big prospect, and it's gonna be a really good fight. I think that if Sabatini's gonna win, it's gonna be through really an overpace and grappling, and he's gonna really get it done on that side of the fight. So we'll see what he does. Probably gonna edge out a decision or maybe even a submission.
I mean, here's the thing with Brito is that Brito fought someone very similar to Sabatini and Jonathan Pierce, right? I would say Sabatini's a better wrestler, but what he did is he was so active on his back, he was able to find a choke off his back with the Bravo choke. So I think that Brito will get this one as much as I want to see Sabatini win. And you're going to hear me say something similar to that later in the program, but we'll get to that when we get there. Another fight got announced. Brandon Moreno is fighting Steve Erceg in UFC Mexico City. Now, there's some interesting matchmaking here. Steve Erceg is ranked number 9 in the world at flyweight and is coming off of 2 losses in a row. Moreno is coming off of a win and is number 2 in the division, I believe, behind Brandon Royval. What do you think about the matchmaking here, and who do you have winning this one, Luke?
I mean, it's kind of odd matchmaking, but then again, we've talked about the state of the flyweight division, how it's kind of an awkward kind of setup right now, especially with Bentoa really clearing out the division and beating these guys who the UFC is kind of stuck with this situation where they don't really know who to match them up with. And I'm not upset with it because this is a fight that I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, going from 9 to 2 is kind of interesting, but I mean, I don't have a particular issue with it. I know what they have planned for Pantoja. I'm assuming that they're going to give him Kai Kara France. So, it's going to be a great fight. And early prediction, I think that Urseg is actually going to get a win here.
See, I don't see eye to eye with you on a lot of factors there. Actually, I think Moreno's going to win. I think he's actually a better boxer and a much better jiu-jitsu player. Better wrestler as well. I think he wins with his grappling here. However, I also see that I think with the sort of shuffling, we had 6 fighters sort of in the mix.
Mm.
At flyweight, we had Brandon Moreno number 2, Steve Erceg number 9, Manel Kopp number 6, Oscar Amabaya number 8, and the unranked Alan Nascimento. The 5 of them all sort of floating around, seeing who's going to fight who. Nascimento got the short end of the stick. He didn't get a booking, but of those 4, I would put Amabayev against Moreno because Amabayev, in my opinion, is the best prospect in the top 10 right now, the best guy coming up the ranks, and Kopp versus Erceg would do numbers even in as a co-main on Mexico City or as an Apex Fight Night main event. And if you want an exciting fight, you can do Kopp Moreno because at least Kopp's coming off a win, and Erceg versus Amabayev is a great fight too. So I think that the way they move the pieces around doesn't really make sense to me, but I will say that this is still going to be a banger fight. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty excited for it.
Yep.
Let's talk about Dominic Cruz, one of the greatest of all time at bantamweight, has retired following double shoulder surgery. Do you have anything to say about that, about the legendary career that was Dominic Cruz, the future absolutely first ballot Hall of Famer if such a thing exists in the MMA world?
I mean, no, he's gonna go down as one of the greatest or did go down as one of the greatest bantamweights of all time, and his retirement makes sense. I think it was something I was expecting, and I'm just happy to see it went down well. And I love
Yeah,
the presentation they gave him. It was great.
yeah, it's unfortunate they didn't get that last hurrah in Seattle, but
Yeah.
it is good to see him, know when his body's telling him to call it quits. And like a lot of fighters don't, he actually seems committed to retiring, and it seems like he's got a bright future behind the commentary booth because he's very good at that. So
Yeah.
we're excited to see what the future holds for Dominic Cruz, despite the fact that his fighting career is now behind him. Two fight cards were announced: UFC 314 and UFC 315, with no fights on them yet. UFC 314 is confirmed to be in Miami. UFC 315 is confirmed to be in Montreal. These are interesting locations. Obviously, 316 still in the air. 317 was announced today for Las Vegas. 316 is rumored to be in Chicago, actually, which is
Mm.
interesting. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to tell you guys that before. There's not much to discuss there, but it is news. Um, Now we're going to move to one of our signature segments. Next up, um, I will turn this on. We're using new software today. We're not using Zoom anymore. We're using a software called Riverside, so shout out to them. So it's a little different than sharing your screen otherwise. But here's next up. Next up, at Middleweight for the championship, I want to see Dricus du Plessis fight Hamzat Chimaev.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, it's easy. It's easy. I mean, Imavov is coming off a great win, but I'd like
Yeah.
to see him fight someone like Kyle Bahayo next in a title
Yep.
eliminator.
And
But
there's an
Chimaev
argument.
is
There's
go
an
ahead.
argument that this fight should have probably already happened, maybe before a Strickland fight, and it's
I
just something
absolutely
that
agree.
needed to be done.
Absolutely, and it's two. Du Plessis is now a huge superstar in Africa and in the United States, and Chimaev is massive in Russia. This is going to
Yep.
be a generational pay per view, in my opinion, in terms
Yep.
of sales. Next is Zhang Weili should move up to flyweight and fight Valentina Shevchenko instead of defending against another strawweight.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, she's cleared her division. The only person she hasn't fought in the top 5, I believe, is Viana Yaninoba, who's already booked against Yan Xiaonan in a title eliminator. I think that Zhang Weili here is. I think Zhang Weili is the greatest woman on the planet. I would favor her against any woman in the UFC outside of maybe Kayla Harrison at 135. But I would love to see this. This is a great
Yeah,
fight.
I
This is
agree.
the-
It is huge implications for women's MMA and the greatest of all time discussion. And this, I could see this even headlining a pay-per-view.
I think this is a rare female fight where this could easily headline a
Yeah.
pay-per-view anywhere in the world.
100%.
And especially if you had it in China, maybe, because China's now opened up and the UFC is interested in holding an event there. I think having Zhang Weili fight there would be absolutely incredible. Once again, her last fight in China was against Jessica Andrade when she won the title for the first time and knocked out Andrade in under 2 minutes, which was an incredible performance against someone as gritty and tough as Andrade is. Next, we have Talisman Teixeira, who came off a 40-second knockout over Justin Tafa on Saturday. Should fight Janata Denise, hopefully at UFC 313, because Denise is looking for an opponent there. Just saying.
Hey, I would love this to happen. I know I'm kind of backing Denise in that stoppage that he had at 309 that I didn't really agree with, and I know it was kind of controversial, but I this is the fight to make.
Yeah, absolutely. These are two high level kickboxers. I don't think we see any grappling in this fight. And you've got two genetic freaks coming at each other. One with a ton of kickboxing experience, one with great MMA striking and an insane reach at 6'7". This is a great fight. Next, Tatiana Suarez, who lost to Komenovich, should fight Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah.
And I think stylistically it's a great fight because Suarez is such an incredible wrestler, but Dern is so great at jiu-jitsu that this fight may play out on the feet, and we may see who has better striking amongst the two, which could be very interesting.
Yeah.
Finally, we have Sean Strickland should fight the winner of Seattle's co-main event between Brandon Allen and Anthony Hernandez.
I mean, I've seen going around this idea that maybe Sean Strickland and Israel Adesanya rematch could go down, and that's something I think not only has more star power going for it in a fight that the UFC might lean towards making. That's also something that I want to see.
I disagree because I think that there's so many great prospects coming up at middleweight. You have guys like Michael Venom Page now. You have guys like Fluffy Hernandez. You have guys like Kyle Bahayo. You have so much young talent. Nasruddin Imavov coming up the ranks right now. I'm kind of tired of seeing guys that are, let's be real, probably past their prime a little bit, going at it and fighting and hogging up the division at the top. I want to see guys like Adesanya who went out on a shield against a guy like Imavov. I want to see a guy like Strickland do the same thing against a guy, even though he has a win over Brendan Allen. That was now 5 years ago. That was the Reebok era. We are in a new era. We are done with the Reebok era. I am ready to see a rematch there. And if that doesn't work, then Anthony Hernandez has looked incredible in his last few outings, especially against Michelle Pereira in his last fight. I think that's a great fight too.
Yeah, and Allen is fiending for that rematch, so maybe we should give it to him.
That's a little preview on accident of what we're going to show next. But first, we're going to do some Fact or Fake before we go to our preview section. First up on Fact or Fake, Luke, Dricus du Plessis is a top 3 middleweight of all time.
So I'm going to go with fake. I don't think that he's there yet. I think that if you think about Anderson Silva, Israel Adesanya, GSP, if you're counting that run, I think they're all a little better than.
I apologize. I apologize for my lack of decorum, but GSP has one win at middleweight ever.
I just think it's more. I think that if you're talking about DDP,
No. We're not doing this. We're not doing this on this program. We're not doing this here.
State your case.
Dricus du Plessis has a win over Israel Adesanya. He has 2 wins over Sean Strickland. He has a win over Robert Whittaker. He has a win over Darren Till. He has a win over Derek Brunson. GSP has a win over Michael Bisping. You know who else has a win over Michael Bisping? You know, Kelvin Gastelum won the fight after the GSP fight. Now, Kelvin Gastelum is, don't get me wrong, one of the most underrated middleweights ever. He had a great fight. He had some incredible wars against Whittaker and Adesanya. He's not in the top 10 conversation, and he beat Bisping at the same time, at the same 3 weeks later, actually. So you look at a guy like GSP, who's, for all of his roses, in my opinion, the greatest welterweight of all time. In my opinion, the greatest fighter of all time. But he's not the greatest middleweight of all time conversation. That'd be like saying that John Jones is the greatest heavyweight of all time because he's fought more times at heavyweight than GSP did at middleweight. I don't see it. The only person that I would put in the top 3, even around Duplessis, would be Chris Weidman, who has the same amount of title defenses, but against weaker competition.
Not Silva and Adesanya?
I would say Adesanya, when Duplessis fought him, was better than when the second time, actually both times Silva fought Weidman.
When DDP in Adesanya fight, you're saying that Adesanya was better. That makes no logical sense at all.
What do you mean?
That was one of the worst versions of Adesanya.
No,
terrible. And he's on the back end of his career.
Okay, and Anderson Silva wasn't after he broke his leg?
It doesn't even compare, bro.
Okay, Chris Weidman, fine. Let's say he beat Silva twice. Who else did he beat?
Who
else? Because he lost to Jacare. He lost to Luke Rockhold, who Bisping then beat.
All right, bro.
I mean, I could see Weidman is number 3, but
DDP. I think DDP's number maybe. Okay, if I'm going in and leaning into your argument, he's 3rd greatest middleweight of all time.
So that's fact then. That would be fact.
And that's pushing it.
Okay, all right. Fact with a question mark next to it, maybe. Next prompt. Zhang Weili is the greatest strawweight of all time.
Fact.
Really?
Yeah.
Say your case. Let me hear you.
I think that wins over Esperanza, Lemos, it's in her performance. I think that actually, I feel like in her next fight, yes, it's going to be a different division, but that is something that I anticipate so much, and I think that seeing that will solidify my take. Maybe this is something that is going to go unanswered, at least for this pod, or a question mark. But I'm leaning towards fact. What about you?
I'm kind of split here, to be honest. I created this question and I don't have the answer because, on the one hand, you have Zhang Weili, who's done things at strawweight that nobody has done since Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and she has 2 wins over Jędrzejczyk. But at the same time, Rose Namajunas, who has also had a very incredible career, has 2 wins over her in title fights, one by a knockout, one by a very close decision. However, Zhang Weili has not lost since, and those fights were 3 years ago. So, we're looking at a fighter who has a win over 2 wins over Joanna Jędrzejczyk, a win over Jessica Andrade, which Namajunas also has. They have a lot of the same wins, but that Esparza win is big because Namajunas lost to Esparza twice. Zhang Weili finished her, right? So it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation to have. I think with one more title defense, I think Zhang Weili is easily the greatest strawweight of all time. But right now, it's right on the edge between her and Rose, in my opinion.
I agree.
Next, fact or fake, Justin Tafa should be cut following his loss to Towson Teixeira.
I think fake. I think that he's fun to watch, and also he's coming off of not co-main, but the 3rd fight on that main card. I don't see why they would cut him for that.
I don't know. This one's tricky.
I think it's a little premature.
Well, he's a 9-5 as a professional fighter.
Yeah. Well, let's not pretend that there's a lot of UFC fighters that have records that are not only on the downside, but just if they can keep Tony Ferguson, if they can keep, I know he's a legend. If they can keep fighters that have records as bad as that, I don't think that being 9-5 is something that's that awful.
Or sorry, I apologize. 7-5. He's 4-5 in the UFC. He has a losing record in the UFC. His wins are over Austin Lane and Parker Porter.
Yeah, I think it's a little premature to cut him.
I mean, he's a big star, but he lost to Carl Williams, who Carl Williams is a very, very good prospect in my opinion. And he lost to Teixeira. He also lost to Jared Vandera, who's not great. Carlos Felipe was a very close fight, and then he got knocked out by Jorgen de Castro, who is now in the CES. Right, yeah. So we're looking at a guy who has good wins, but also bad losses.
Yeah.
He's a big star. I think maybe 1 or 2 more fights, probably 1 more fight to prove it. But that was a really brutal loss. I mean, that's as bad as he can get at home.
Yep, pretty bad.
But Teixeira is legit. I mean, that guy's good. Let's talk about Crute versus Bellato, the 4th fight on the card. Do you think it should have been a road to draw, fact or fake?
I mean, I scored it a draw.
I did too.
Yeah, so I really can't disagree with the judges here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it sucks because it doesn't give you that fulfillment that you want as a fight fan. But what it does do is it makes it so that the fight is fair. And I had it a 10-8 first round and 2 10-9s in the second for Bellato.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually agree with you there, Luke. We can finally agree on something on this
There we go.
week's broadcast. There we go.
There we go.
What about Wang Kong? Do you think that she showed that she was as good as she thought she was, as we thought she was, with her win over Bruna Brazil on Saturday? Fact or fake?
I'm a lean towards fact just because I'm an optimistic person at heart, but I do think that in my I completely forget who she got submitted by, but I am not gonna forget that occurred, especially when she was as big of a favorite as she was. But she looked great.
Yeah, she looked really good against Brazil. Brazil had
And
very strong upset potential, in my opinion.
yeah,
Brazil has a great win over Molly McCann, and Wayne Kong just showed her levels. So I'm kind of back on the train a little bit. I kind of agree with you here. A
yeah.
little bit back on the train, hesitant, but I might be buying a ticket on the Wayne Kong hype train once again. Because I was on this broadcast, on this very program, and said she is not the future. She is the present, and she's a future champion. And then she got choked out 2 days later. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be a little more hesitant this time. I'm not gonna count my ducks before they hatch, count my chickens before they hatch. But what I will say is, she looked pretty good on Saturday night. Let's just say that.
She redeemed herself a little bit.
A little bit. Let's talk about the first fight on the card, the Quill and Salkeld fight. Salkeld has made himself a name already with his quick stoppage over Anchal Jubilee, but a lot of fans were questioning if the fight was early. Do you think the fight was early, fact or fake?
I'm gonna go with fact just because I think that while the knockdown was impressive, there's been this trend to kind of stop the fight right after a knockdown, regardless of if the fighter is conscious and showing signs that they could maybe even put up some sort of defensive action. And I think that probably happened here. Do I think that that was going to lead to some sort of comeback? No, I think the fight would have been stopped in probably the next 5 seconds. And so I'm gonna say yes, it was early, but maybe in the ref's point of view, that kind of prevented a few unnecessary shots that didn't need to happen.
I mean, here's the thing, right? You look at stoppages like that, and I always one of my favorite fights of all time, and it's free on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, please watch. Czech Congo fought Pat Barry in 2013, I believe, and Czech Congo got knocked down 3 times. He was completely unconscious. Somehow he managed to get up and knock out Pat Barry in the first round out cold. This stoppage with Anchal Jubilee was much earlier than even the Czech Congo stoppage would have been had it been stopped for Barry. So, was it an early stoppage? Yes. What are the odds that he recovered? Maybe 1 in 90.
Yeah.
Not very high, but I will not stop until I see a fighter who is clearly not defending himself, and he was defending himself at that point. He was working for position. He was trying to improve. I think it was an early stoppage. Jubilee has really disappointed me in the UFC. I think he may get cut for that, which I think is a shame because he's the first ever fighter from India, which is pretty incredible, but that's a pretty damning loss, even with the early stoppage.
Yeah, for sure.
One more factor fake. If he loses to Gregory Rodrigues this Saturday night, Jared Cannonier's path should likely be retirement.
I'm going to go with fact. And I love him, and I think that he's been great. I think that he has one of the most aesthetic builds in the UFC as someone who follows bodybuilding and maybe has a passion in pursuing it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Mom. But it's just interesting, and I really think that he should retire following. This is going to be is this his 3rd consecutive loss or 2nd?
I believe this would be his 3rd in a row after losing to Imavov.
3rd in a row.
I think it would be his 3rd. Who did he fight before he fought Imavov or after Imavov? He's fought since then. I should know my tape. Let me pull this up right now. So his last 3 fights, he lost to Bohayo by unanimous decision.
Yeah.
And then he lost to Imavov by knockout in the 4th round after winning the first 2 rounds. He beat Vettori dominantly prior to those 2, and he beat Strickland by split decision. So he's 2-2 in his last 4. So.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, also keep in mind his age. I mean, he's 43?
Yeah, he's one of the oldest ranked fighters in the UFC.
Yeah. So I think it's time.
No, I agree with you here. I mean, selfishly, I'm one of Jared Cannonier's biggest fans. I think I absolutely adore him on the mic. He's a very fun fighter. He's a great character, and much more than the UFC has done press for him. He should be a much bigger star than he is. I think the UFC severely mishandled his career. However, because I'm such a fan, if he does lose, and with a guy like Rodrigues, he'd probably lose by knockout because Rodrigues has crazy power. I think it would have to be, unfortunately, retirement for Cannonier because I don't want to see him get hurt anymore, to be quite honest. And I don't want to see him fight in the GFL or whatever, grandfather fight league they have for him. So let's move on. to the most famous segment that we do here, Ted's Talks. Now, for those of you at home that don't know, we're gonna pull back the curtain a little bit. Neither Luke or I have seen this. We have no idea what Ted's gonna say. We never have. We're going in completely blind. Let's see what happens. Welcome to Ted's Talks.
Another segment of Ted's Talks. On Saturday, we have a card from the Apex, a middleweight main event between Jared Cannonier and Gregory Rodrigues. This is a very fun fight. Jared Cannonier has lost his last 2 fights, and meanwhile, RoboCop is on a little bit of a win streak. So it's going to be fun. An opportunity for Cannonier to bounce back, but also an opportunity for RoboCop Rodrigues to put himself more on the map and increase his win streak. How I see the fight going down is, I think if RoboCop wants to win, he's got to get it done early. He's got to shut Jared out in the first round. What I think is going to happen is the majority of the first round is going to be on the ground. And then towards the end, I think Rodrigues is going to catch him with the right hook. It's going to put him out, ground and pound, and that'll be it. TKO, late round, round 1 for Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues. You heard it here first. As always, enjoy the rest of the episode. I'm Ted. This has been Ted Talks. And that's my take.
See that wink at the end there? That was sneaky.
Yeah, I know.
See that wink?
That's, dude. I know.
He's risen me up.
Always the most interesting segment on the show.
What do you think of that take?
I don't know about round 1, but I'm agreeing with him. I think that Rodrigues has one of the most underrated light heavyweights, and he has a crazy knockout power. And yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Here's the thing with Rodrigues is I've met Rodrigues. He's a very good guy. Does a lot of good fan service. Obviously, he's
also we've met him too.
We've met him. But the thing is with Rodrigues is 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. Geez, he fought Bruno Ferreira, right? Who's Baby Hulk, one of the most strongest guys at middleweight, absolute tank. However, he knocked Rodrigues out cold. Yeah. And somehow Rodrigues maintained his shine as a huge, dominant, prospect. And Silva didn't get any of that. Or Ferreira did not get any of that. I apologize. I think Ferreira is a better prospect than RoboCop because they were in the cage together and RoboCop got knocked out. However, the power against the chin of Cannonier, which has always been a little fluky, scares me a lot. So we'll talk about that fight a little more in depth in a second here, but let's talk about our prospect of the night. This is our new segment on the show. We each name one fighter who may not be getting the shine they deserve quite yet, but we think that they're the best prospect on the card. I'll start first to give Luke a little bit more time to think about it because he had a few names in mind. My pick for prospect of the night is the co-main event. Yusuf Zalal squares off against Calvin Kattar. I won't give you my pick yet. However, Yusuf Zalal is a massive favorite over the ranked Calvin Kattar, a crafty veteran in Kattar. Zalal is currently unranked. He's lost in the UFC to a couple guys. His most notable fight is probably his debut fight against Ilia Topuria, which is one of the toughest fights of Topuria's career. I've got Zalal in that Kattar fight, and I've got him submitting Kattar probably in the second or third round here.
All right, I'm going to go with my take. So I'm going to say in the flyweight division, I'm going to go with Rafael Estevam. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
You are.
He is 12-0 in the flyweight division, and he's going up against Jesus Aguilar. I think this is going to be a showcase of Estevam's skills, his striking. Maybe see some of his grappling too. It's going to be interesting. Once again, undefeated, and in the flyweight division, especially with the current state of the division, I think that's a big deal. And I think that the division really needs guys like him. And with a win, that would impress me, and I'm sure it'll impress some of the matchmakers at UFC.
Here's the thing with Estevam. Estevam's been on a long layoff, but his last win was over Charles Johnson, who's now on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC. Estevam is legit. I mean, we'll talk about him more later because he was my second pick for prospect of the night. But oh my goodness, why are people not talking about him? He's really, really good at fighting people. I mean, seriously. Let's start with the main event here. We both given our picks. We both have Rodrigues by knockout, unfortunately for all the Cannonier fans, but we don't need to dwell on this too much. It is kind of shocking that Rodrigues is already 32 and he's not ranked. However, he is on a good win streak. Cannonier's 2 in a row. As Cannonier said in an interview earlier this week, he's hoping to Hadouken Rodrigues so he can get the fans, quote, back on his nutsack. So we'll see if that happens on Saturday night. Anyway, in more family-friendly content, Calvin Kattar is fighting Yusuf Zalal in the co-main event. Who do you got in this one and how do you got him?
Still a little bit sick. This is how you know it's live, folks.
Yep.
I'm gonna go with I haven't even made up my mind yet. On the spot, I'm gonna go with I don't even know the odds on this, but I'm gonna go with Zalal.
They're on the screen.
I'm gonna go. I don't where. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Zalal.
Yeah, it's a
I think.
heavy favorite, which is
Yeah. That makes sense. That's good. Yeah.
You think that's
And
fair? That's fair odds.
maybe it should be a little bit closer, given that
Yeah.
Calvin Kattar's like, he's a top 10 featherweight.
Yeah.
And I'm glad Zalal is gonna get this ranked matchup. And I think we're gonna see, Zalal, he's gonna go up some of the best boxing in
Mhm.
featherweight, in my opinion. So I'm curious to see what happens, but I think that he's probably gonna get it done. He's a lot more versatile.
Look, I agree. I think Salal's got decent boxing, but he's got really good grappling, and Cater's
Yeah.
always struggled with good grapplers. So yeah, I would go for Zalal here too, but maybe at -400, I'd sprinkle some on Cater because Cater has very strong knockout power and can beat anybody in the division on a
sure.
good day.
For
So
sure.
we'll see. Next is our under the radar segment where we highlight some fights that you may not know about that we want to bring attention to because there's a lot of good fights on this card. It's a sneaky good card for the Apex. Let's talk
Yeah.
about our first fight. Gabriel Bonfim is fighting Chaos, the Ox Fighter Williams. Now, we will talk about this a little bit more in our second fight spotlight here, but both of the Bonfim brothers are fighting on this card. I would say that Gabriel Bonfim is a bit of a better prospect than his brother,
Yeah.
but Chaos Williams is nasty. I mean, this guy is a mean.
Yeah.
He's got some of the biggest power at welterweight we've ever seen. Who do you got in this one?
I'm gonna go with Williams. I think he's gonna upset Bonfim here. I know Bonfim's kind of like a rising star, but the power, he could shut him out of nowhere. And I don't think that I could. I think that this is also probably some good odds to throw a little bit cash on. Plus 185 for someone who has the kind of power that Williams does. In welterweight is something that I think I could take advantage of.
Yeah, look, if you look at the highlight reel of Chaos Williams, it's one of the best in the division. I mean, his win over Abdul Razak Al Hassan just, to this day, floors me. But Bonfim is 16-1 in his career, and he's got very good wins. But I will also go with the underdog here. I think I'm feeling Williams here. I think his power is going to be too much for Bonfim. Bonfim's a very good technical striker, but Williams, if he lands one shot, he'll put Bonfim out cold. He'll put anybody out cold at 170. So I'm excited for this fight. Very excited. This is the fight I'm most excited for in the whole card, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Next is Ismail Bonfim, the lightweight, 20-4 in his professional career against Nazim Sadikov in a very close fight at the odds makers. Who do you got in this one?
I'm gonna go with the Bonfim brothers. So I think that it's gonna be a little lopsided. I think that Gabriel might not get it done, but Ismail probably will. And it's gonna be close, but I'm gonna let you talk a little bit more about this.
Yeah, I'm fading both of them, to be honest. I'm going with Sadikov here. Sadikov's got really good quality wins. He's got a win over Terrence McKinney and a questionable win, right? There were some flagrant, fouls committed to win that fight, but we haven't forgotten about that. His fight with Vyacheslav Borchev was a very good fight. His fight against Slava, which he fought to a draw in predominantly striking, which was kind of incredible because we know how good Borchev's striking is. I've got Sadikov in this one, but it's going to be a close fight. I think the odds are about right. I think it's very, very close. Next, Rafael Estevam is fighting Jesus Aguilar. I believe it's the first fight of the card, which is incredible to me. With the prospect,
is it really?
I
Wow.
believe it is with the prospect that Estevam is. It's on the early prelims. I know that.
Yeah, and he's a pretty big favorite too. So, my pick.
Yep, and we are in alignment there. That sounds really good. And now one more fight. Rodolfo Vieira is fighting Philly's own Andre Petrosky. How you got this one, Luke? I have a guess, but why don't you tell the crowd?
I kind of have a tendency to back people just because they're local to me, and I'm gonna stick with Petrosky, the Philly, a local guy, very local to me. And I think this is gonna be definitely decided on the ground. If Petrosky's gonna pull out a win here as an underdog, he needs to avoid the submission. Because Vieira is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And stylistically, this is a fascinating matchup. Now, Petrosky has power. Petrosky can hit. If you guys don't know this at home, he has some power. So I think that he can actually get this done on the feet, but I would not advise Petrosky to go into the ground with a guy as talented as Rodolfo Vieira, even if that is his normal path to victory with his suffocating wrestling. I might lean to Petrosky here to get it done with the standing. Maybe he gets a knockout on the feet. Maybe. I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it. But I think that at plus 175, that's decent money for Petrosky, but Vieira stylistically is in an advantageous position here, so we'll see what happens. And that's all we have for you guys today. We hope you guys enjoy this wonderful, wonderful show. We enjoy making it. It's a good time. We're hoping our new software works so this isn't gone forever. We kept it a little short today, which is good. Because I have to do my laundry and my computer's about to die. You know how it is.
If only you guys could see if only you guys could see some of the behind the scenes of our scheduling and working to find times while Aiden's in the university, while I'm in high school. It's a lot of work, but we love to do it. I know this is always the highlight of my week, and it's just an amazing thing that I've grown to love.
And of course, I have no promises to make at this point, but I'm working with Valley Fight Steers to bring on some fighters, hopefully by the end of this week, to make sure that we have a show with some really, really talented regional MMA fighters here that, who knows, could be on the UFC stage sooner than you know it. With that, we'll leave you. I've been Aiden.
Hey, it's Luke. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. See you guys next time.